Well, good morning. Glad to see everyone out here today for our worship services and for our Bible class. We're on our second word now in our one-word study. So let me ask, how did the readings go this week? How did y'all do? Anybody have any issues this week? Full confession. Life kind of got in the way this week. And we didn't keep on our normal schedule through getting through our devos. We wound up doing them all, but we kind of had to cram them in. We had a surprise date night on Thursday. My father-in-law found out it was National Spouses Day on Thursday, apparently. If you missed it, sorry, guys. But it was apparently National Spouses Day on Thursday, and so he was texting with Riley during the day, and she comes to us that afternoon and says, "Hey, Pap's coming over, and you guys are getting to go out on a date." So we're like, okay. So it kind of threw us off. We really enjoyed it. We had a good time, but it kind of threw us off, and we didn't get our devotional done that night. And then Friday after work, was dealing with some car issues, and we had decided we were going to go to the singing that was at Bremen, and so we were rushing to get dinner before we got out the door, and we wound up not getting it done on Friday either. So we finally sat down last night and had some time together, and it was kind of nice to have more of an extended time together, but we definitely don't want to make a habit of that. And I wanted to bring that up and point that out, that sometimes it's easy for life to get in the way of things. Even when it's stuff that's, good or right, or things that we should do, or things that we should enjoy, or whatever, like a date night, or going to a singing, or dealing with car issues, or whatever. Sometimes life can get in the way, and we get so busy with other stuff that it's what makes it difficult sometimes to sit down and focus and read God's Word. So it definitely has to be something intentional. So, and it's also something that if it happens, you miss a day, whatever, don't get discouraged about it. Do what you can to catch up. Do what you can to continue on with it and continue making it a habit, and definitely be blessed by it. So I just wanted to share that kind of before we got started. Felt like I needed to have a full confession there as far as our struggle this week. So,
I'm glad you clarified that about your father-in-law, because you first said you had date night, and then you said your father-in-law, and it disturbed me. I understand what you meant.
Sorry. Yes. Our father-in-law came and babysat the children so that Deanna and I could go on a date night. Yeah, let's clarify that, make sure everybody understands. So, of course, the word this week was creation. I was excited, interested when I saw that the author for the Devos this week was Kyle Butt. Obviously, a few weeks ago, we watched the video when I taught on Wednesday night that he did. He's very involved with Apologetics Press. And so I was thinking we were going to get a lot more Christian evidences type stuff in this. And there was some of that in there, but it wasn't quite what I was expecting, I'll be honest, when I went into the week and the type of devotionals that we were going to get out of this. But I was pleasantly surprised with kind of where he took it, this idea of creation, and that he didn't focus just on the creation week and God creating the heavens and the earth and all those things, but what it means, what the creation is, and that we are a creation, and what it means to be created in God's image, and lots of different things that we'll talk about as we get into this. Before we get into some of the ideas from the devotionals, excuse me, in the study guide, That's the separate book that we have for the teachers to kind of help the teachers out, and it provides a little bit of information. For the first week, it was kind of more of an introduction, and now this week, it's more of the normal format that's in here with the study guide. And the way they start it is, and I think it's appropriate because we're doing a one-word study, it gives some background on Hebrew and Greek words that are tied into the word that we're studying. And so in the Hebrew and in the Greek, there's two words in each language that I want to focus on. In the Hebrew, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing these correctly or not. In the Hebrew, it's yasar. And in the Greek, it's poieo, maybe, P-O-I-E-O in English letters. And both of those words convey the idea of kind of making something, producing something, forming something, fashioning something, that we are taking things and making them into something. It is interesting in the Hebrew that yasar, that is the word that's used when it says he formed Adam from the dust of the ground. He was taking something that he had already created and using that to create something else, to form something else. But then, again, one in Hebrew and one in Greek, there's two other words that are very interesting. In Hebrew, it's bara, or bara, B-A-R-A. And in Greek, it's K-T-I-Z-O. I have no idea how to pronounce that K-T together. I even looked up the phonetic spelling of it, and the phonetic spelling didn't even help me at all because it still had the K-T. So I don't know how that word is technically supposed to be pronounced. But both of those words literally mean, in the original language, to create. And each of those words in the Bible are only used to describe God creating something. And I thought that was so interesting and so amazing that God's form of creation, the word used to describe God creating things, is unique. Because we often say, oh, we created things, or we invented things, or we come up with things, or whatever. But we don't create in the same way that God creates. The only way we can create something is by taking something that already exists, even if we're creating an idea, if you will, or a concept about something. It's still based on we're using our mind that God created to think that up and come up with that. God creates from nothing. There is this idea that God creates what's called ex nihilo, which literally means from nothing. And that is a key point in this idea of who God is and the power that he has and the greatness that he has, that he can literally create from nothing. In this physical world that we exist in, that God created, getting a little scientific, there's something that's known, a law of science that's known as the conservation of mass, or sometimes it's the conservation of mass energy. That in the known universe that we have, mass and energy are neither created nor destroyed. The same amount of mass and energy that was in the beginning when the universe started is still here. Now that ties into what we've talked about in Patrick's lessons on Wednesday, that second law of thermodynamics, that mass and energy is slowly moving from a more usable state to a less usable state, that we are getting more and more chaotic in the universe as we progress along through time. But none of it is created or destroyed. It's just changed to a different form. When we burn something, we're not destroying that matter, we're changing it into a different form. We're changing it from that matter to heat that then gets lost into the atmosphere and the gas or whatever that comes off of it. So we don't destroy things. We can't destroy in the same way that God could destroy. We can't create in the same way that God can create. And so I wanted to kind of lay that groundwork with those words and those ideas as we go through this and look at this. And it was interesting, some of the verses and some of the ideas, like for example, on Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens and the earth. That's that bara word, that word that's only used to describe God creating. And there's many other verses that talk about that, and if we have time, we'll get back to some of those. We'll get through some as we go through here. So, of course, the first one was this idea that we are no accident. He talked in the lesson about the conflicting worldviews, and this is something I'm not going to spend a lot of time because Patrick covered this in great detail in his lessons on Wednesday night before the first of the year, or even extending over, I think. But anyway, we talked about this a lot, that our view of where we came from, our view of why we're here, greatly influences our view of life, our view of ourselves, our view of others, our view of the world, whatever it may be. And Patrick talked about our world view, literally how we view the world, how we view ourselves and everything in it. And that if we take evolution to be true, the answer to why we're here is, well, we're an accident. When you boil it down to the base fundamentals of it, we just happen to show up here. We're an accident with no purpose, no design, no plan, whatever. We're just here. We're an accident. But if we study and understand and believe Genesis 1 and the creation account and what God did, then we are not only not an accident, we are valuable. The verse for that day, for that devotional, was 127, that God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him, male and female, he created them. Now, there's a lot of question or debate or whatever about what that means exactly to be created in the image of God, whether it's just the fact that we have free will to choose or what it is about that. And I don't necessarily have the answer, but I know that that's a comforting idea, that we are special above all the rest of creation. This phrase, this idea is not used to describe anything else in creation other than mankind, other than human beings. That we are created in his image. And if we are created in his image, that means he made us special. We are special. We are valuable. We are unique. We are not descended from some lower life form. We are not an accident. The next one, I thought this one was really interesting. The CEO of all creation was the title for this one. What did y'all think about this one? I thought that was an interesting way to look at this. That was your favorite? Yeah. Right. And when you first look at it and you think about it, you think, well, it's God. No, it's Jesus who he's talking about. And we've talked about this, that Jesus is the creator. He was there in the beginning. All things were created through him. And that's the verse, Colossians 1, 15 through 17. Get there. Would someone like to read that for me? Colossians 1, 15 through 17.
He is the image of creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together.
Okay. The image of the invisible God. I like that idea that he is, God, Jesus said of himself, if anyone has seen me, he has seen the Father. It's the idea that God is our physical, that Jesus is our physical representation, the image of the Father that we can see and know and understand. Go ahead.
I want to interrupt you for a moment, but I was just thinking, with the prophecy in Isaiah of Jesus, he has no form or comeliness that we should desire him. It wasn't that he was a beautiful man, a good-looking person, but he represents God. He's in the image of God. So whatever that statement meant to Adam, I will make man in my image, because we know that God is beautiful and glorious. So Jesus, that's not the part that we should reflect upon, is our physical attribute. It's the way he interacted with others, the way he treated others, the way he thought about his relationship with his Father in heaven. Everything about Jesus is a reflection of what that's the way Adam was supposed to have been. That's the way we're all supposed to be. Yes. This is the image of God. If you want to know what that is, well, just study Jesus. I mean, look at his life. That's who he is.
Yeah.
And he said, if you see me, you saw the Father.
Right, yeah. That he is showing us what we should be. I love that idea. I hadn't even thought about that. What hit me in this verse that it says he is before all things. And I think the meaning here is that he is, that idea that it talks about that all things were created, visible and invisible, thrones or dominions, rules or authorities, that he is before all those things. He is head of all those things. He is ruler of those things. And then this idea that in him all things hold together. I meant to look at some other versions. Someone who has something besides the ESV. What else? What does it say there? All things consist. Okay. Anything else? Does anyone have any other?
Possess me in the beginning of his way, before his works of old.
Okay.
Which goes back to the Colossians.
Yeah. But this idea of all things hold together, all things consist. When I read that verse before, I'd heard that, I thought about that, but it hit me, and it made me think of the crucifixion. And Matthew chapter 27, let's turn there because I want to read that. Someone else read for me. Matthew 27, read verses 50 through 54.
Again, in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook, the rocks split, and the tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs after Jesus' resurrection and went into the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that had happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, "Surely he is the Son of God."
Okay. God, in human form, Jesus the Son, the Creator, that all things consist, all things are held up by him. And the moment he dies, creation falls apart. Creation begins falling apart. Momentarily. It's just momentarily. But this idea that without him, in that moment that he died, that creation just couldn't contain itself. And I just thought that was amazing, that it shows again the power of Jesus and his creative authority and all this authority that he's been given. Hebrews 1:3 also has the same idea. It says that he upholds all things through the word of his power. There's that idea of the power of the word again in that scripture.
So his word made it, and his word holds it together.
Yeah.
It's a continual word, isn't it?
Yeah. Psalm 19:1, the heavens declare the glory of God. I skipped forward to the next one. Matthew 28:18 through 20, where he's giving the Great Commission, and he tells the disciples, all authority has been given to me. That he has been granted all authority in this world. That all things consist through him. The next one he talks about seeing an invisible God. And of course, Romans chapter 1, specifically verse 20, is the verse that he uses. This is one we talked about last week. We've talked a lot about through the study on Christian evidences, that this idea that, so many in the world today are trying to say so many in the world today say that God does not exist. You can't see God, you can't prove God, so he doesn't exist. This is one little side note. This is one of the things that I enjoy about doing these now with our family is as we stopped in the middle of our devotionals, we're reading through this to help explain to the girls. It talks about atheists and agnostics in here, and in that particular devotional. And they had a good idea of what atheists were, but they weren't familiar with the term agnostic or what it meant. So we had to spend a little bit of time explaining that to them, and this idea of what it means to be agnostic, that you can't really make up your mind. I tried the best I could. It's kind of, well, we don't really know. That's really kind of, we can't make up our mind. That's kind of the idea. But what Romans chapter 1 tells us, what we can see, we talked about as a family, what are ways that we see God's existence in creation? I think it was Abby that just mentioned the human body, or mankind. Just in us, what you can see, the glory, the creation, the order, the design. Deanna mentioned sunsets. Just sitting and watching the beauty of a sunset. The ocean, watching the waves in the ocean. Everything. And to me, and I didn't mention this, and I've thought about this before, the fact that we have in ourselves something about us that allows us to appreciate the beauty of creation, the beauty of the world, let alone whether you see the order and the design or whatever in it. I think anyone, whether they believe in God or not, can look at the beautiful orange sky and the clouds and the sunset and go, oh, doesn't that look beautiful? Or see the mountains, the ocean, or whatever, and find beauty in creation. Why would we evolve that within ourselves? What is the evolutionary benefit of us being able to appreciate beauty? The fact that something innate to humans, that we enjoy the beauty of creation. Animals don't do that. The animal world doesn't do that. They use creation. They, do what they have to do to survive and use things and all that. And I mean, we kind of do the same thing too, but we have that ability to appreciate that. And I think that's so that God can help lead us to that realization that He is real. He is here. He has created all this for us.
Chris, the most disturbing part of this was that the very first sentence, currently in the United States, unbelief and non-religion are the fastest growing religions in the country. That should scare all of us to death.
Yeah.
That people
Yeah.
aren't raising their children right, they aren't talking to them about creation. It's important to teach those things from the time they are babies, from the time they understand. They need to be taught that God is real, God created us, and that we need to serve Him. And that part it was
Yeah.
just terrifying to me.
And that's, I talked about this at the beginning, the lessons here. I liked that there was a succession to this, that the lessons he went through, that he talked about the creation, that we are no accident, that Jesus is over all creation, and that we can see God through His creation and know Him through the creation. But then what happens if we don't do that? I think the fourth one was my favorite, this idea of contrasting Genesis 1:31, where God has finished the creation, and He looks at it and He says, it is very good. Every other day He said, it is good. He looked at the creation and what He had created and said, it is good, it is good. And then He gets to the end, on a side note, after He's created us, after He's created man, and He looks at the entirety of creation and says, it is very good. How do we get from that to Genesis 6:5, that the thought of man is only evil continually? We went from perfection in the garden to chaos. I told the girls when we were doing our devotionals last night that it hit me. We went from God's design to man's desire. And that oftentimes our desires are at odds with His design, with His plan. And we need to change our desires and change our goals.
His creation have to be chastised. So when we have that ability to choose, and the reason that we became more destructive, and a lot of people doesn't accept God until destruction comes about. Hurricane, tornado, whatever, some type of destruction in life, and then they would accept the creation of God and the will of God itself.
Yeah, that's so true. We tend to, as a society, as a world, we tend to draw closer to God when things go wrong, when we feel like we need Him. Patrick's talked about this idea, the unity that we saw in our country in the days after 9/11. When we were going through that tragedy, through that difficulty, through that loss of that time, and how that brought us together. And then how far we've come since then, in falling apart and tearing each other apart and all those things. But the passage from the fourth one is 2 Peter 3:4-7. I won't read all of it, but he talks here about this. this idea that in the end there's those that will say, where is the promise of his coming? Where is God? Where is he at? For ever since the fathers fell asleep, all things are continuing as they were from the beginning of creation. We're just going along like we always have been. Where's God? When is he coming back? Show him to me. We have that in our society today. They're not necessarily saying it because they believe in God and think, well, when's he coming back? We're ready for him to come back. Come on. They're saying it's more of that question of where is God? The world continues on as it always has. And where is God? And the point that Peter makes here is, no, it's not continuing as the world always has, because you forget the flood. You forget what happened then. And that things got so bad that God wiped it all off.
You willfully forget.
And that's the point of Romans chapter 1 as well, is that we can see the beauty of God in creation, we can see the design, we can know that he's there, but we choose not to, or people choose not to. They willfully ignore the signs that are there, the evidence that is there. They choose not to believe it and choose to worship the creation rather than the Creator. Right. That's the idea. If you believe in evolution, you're smart. If you deny it, you're dumb. That's what the world tells us. But God tells us the opposite. And he even says they're going to claim to be wise. Those that deny the creation and deny the existence of God, they're going to be claimed to be wise, but they're fools.
It's interesting when you think about those that you confront in your life, especially someone that may be close to you, who says at some point, I just don't believe in God. I don't serve him because I don't believe in him. It hurts us, and I think we don't really put our finger on why it hurts so much. It's not that they don't agree with us. It's not that, they've got some different perspective. It's that in them saying that what they're really saying is, I don't love God, and I don't want to have anything to do with him, and I don't want to have anything to do with me. So it's a rejection of God that you're hearing, and I think that's what hurts us so bad, is that we know, because they know better, everyone knows better. It's like I said before, if you're cognizant enough to be able to discuss your origin, that tells you all you need to know. I mean, you have enough mental power. Where did that come from? Why did we evolve the ability to think and conceive different ideas? Maybe eating, procreating, but beyond that, why would I even ponder such philosophical issues? What would propel me to do that? That's absurd. I mean, the fact that you're thinking these thoughts. So when someone says, I don't believe in God, instinctively, what that really means is I don't love him and I don't want anything to do with him. That's why it hurts so bad, I think.
Yeah, and it also hurts because, it's damaging their soul. And they're putting themselves in that position.
Yeah, it's going to hurt them.
Yeah, they're not going to go to heaven, they're going to go to the other place. And they know this, but yet they don't care. Mm-hmm. That's what hurts also.
Yeah, non-caring.
Non-caring more than the rejection hurts, but it also hurts knowing to where they're putting themselves in for a bad time if they don't come to know God. This has happened to one of my family, and it's disturbing. And it's hard to reach them because they don't want to be reached.
When we become selfish, we reject anything and anybody. When selfishness set in on us. So we can't have, a person can't have their way for their life, then where is God? Why God is not doing this for me? Why can't I do this? Why can I have that? Because of their own ambition and selfishness. Even down to the beginning of it all, the trouble that was in the garden, selfishness played a role in that too. So God gave us a system, either you do or you don't. But we have the choice of reading. So everything is a do and a do not. But when we become selfish, we reject a lot. A lot of things.
And you see that so much in our society today, that this idea that's so prevalent right now, that if you don't agree with me, or you say things that I don't like, that I don't agree with, I'm just cutting you out of my life. This idea has torn families apart, children, parents, and grandchildren that won't even sit down and talk to each other anymore because, oh, well, you think like this or you think like that, and I don't want that in my life, and I don't agree with you. And we've lost the ability to sit down and talk and reason with each other. As a society, we've gotten to the point where disagreement just means, nope, I'm done with you. And it's yeah.
You don't sit at the table in the morning and eat. You go get your food and go watch TV or go play a video game or something else besides being together and talking what happened that day, the things you went through. You better help each other, as you have that conversation.
Yeah.
That's the reason to me, this study is so good for the family, because you have that time to take that moment,
Yeah.
get together and actually look at God's word and meditate on it.
And so the little bit of time we have left, the last one, this idea, he goes from creation, the perfection, the invisible God, to our messing it all up through sin entering the world, which, again, I like that we've got a continuation of the ideas here, because sin is the next word we're going to study. So then now how do we fix that? How do we fix that problem? 2 Corinthians 5:17. There, okay. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. We are a new creation. And I liked this idea that he expressed in here, that we're not just, when we become Christians, that we're not just changed, we're not just molded into something new. We are literally something brand new. The word here about where he says we are a new creation, the root word of that is that same Greek word that refers to God's form of creation. The way that God creates, that he creates us as something new. Psalm 51, David's psalm of repentance after his sin with Bathsheba, where he says, create in me a clean heart. The word that he uses there is that Hebrew word bara, that is God's form of creation. He's not saying change my heart. He's not saying mold my heart. He's saying create something new in me. My old heart is damaged. It's broken. It doesn't follow you the way it needs to, so give me a new one. Something only God can do. And that we have to have God to create that new self. That we have to do it the way he wants us to do it in order for us to have that creation. Ephesians chapter 4. Verse 22, to put off your old self, which belongs to your former manner of life and is corrupt through deceitful desires, and be renewed in the spirit of your minds, and put on the new self, created after the likeness of God in true righteousness and holiness. Again, that created word, that's God's creation, that he has created a new likeness, a new self for us, after the likeness of God, after the image of God, in that example of Jesus that he gave us as what the image of God should be, that we should follow that example, that we should follow after him and be in that new self, in that new life. I didn't have time to get to it. There was some information in the study guide that it summarized some lessons. I guess this was from a sermon or a book or something that Wayne Jackson had written, about 6 lessons from the creation. And I'll just run through these really quick because we've talked about some of these already. The first one is what we talked about in the beginning, that the worth and value of humanity, that we are made in the image of God. Number 2, that the creature is responsible to the Creator, that we are beholden to God, that we are his creation, and so we are responsible to him. Creation shows us what the foundation of the family should be. God's design, again, in the beginning, what his design was. That it was male and female, that a man and wife should leave their parents, the father should leave his mother and father and cleave to his wife, and they should become one flesh. That is the foundation for the family. And then we see in creation the origin and consequence of sin, but also in that, and Jeff talked about that this morning, our first glimpse of the redemptive plan in Genesis chapter 3:15, that the seed of man would crush the serpent's head. That is the seed of woman. Sorry, yes, the seed of woman would crush the serpent's head, and that is ultimately fulfilled in Jesus and his crushing Satan's attempts at overthrowing this world. And the number 6, the last lesson, reveals the utter foolishness of evolution. So anyway, so like I said, next week the word is sin. We are actually going to be out of town. The pages, it should be in the bulletin, but it starts on page 22 in your devotional guides. We will be out of town. So Brother Pettingill is actually going to be our first other teacher to come in and teach us for that one. So look forward to that. Study ahead, and I'll plan on being back and talking about what's after that, the wrath of God